Good afternoon and welcome to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Summit 2020. And what a year it has been. Over the course of the next 2 days, we have a series of talks and conversations designed to help you understand how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the circular economy agenda and what it means for the future. A little spoiler alert, but our view is that the circular economy is more relevant than ever. And that's because it's a big idea. It's bigger than just better recycling. It's something that doesn't exist yet. It's something we need to design and build, and in doing so, solve many of the interconnected challenges that we face. So whilst we need to reflect and learn from the huge disruption of the past 6 months, in front of us lies a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build a better economy. But don't worry, thankfully you don't have to just take my word for it. We will hear from people at the top of their organisations and at the cutting edge of the transition who are equally enthusiastic. Hopefully, that's the plan. This is a live event after all. In addition to the live stuff today and tomorrow, do explore the featured video section of the Summit website, where we have curated content that goes deeper on the topics and themes that we cover in these live sessions. Right, let's go. Let me introduce Lucy Parker. Lucy is a partner at Brunswick Group and has spent a career guiding organisational responses to critical issues. And she will set the scene in conversation with our founder, Ellen MacArthur, and CEO, Andrew Morlet. Lucy, over to you.
Thank you, Joe, and it's a great privilege to be here. And hello to you too. How exciting to be together in these very first few minutes of the summit. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a year we'll all never forget, hasn't it? We know that this is extraordinary and will never leave us. And surely in great part because of COVID, but not exclusively COVID. So we're looking at disruption in the economy all over the world, and indeed social unrest that is bringing people out on the streets. So this is a very testing time for all of us. And it's therefore, I suppose, not surprising that what you hear quite a lot of is these environmental challenges are important. Redesigning to respond to the climate crisis is important. But right for now, we have to focus on what's immediately in front of us, and that's COVID and economic disruption. How do we do that? The rest will have to wait. And I suppose when I think of you guys, and I think how much you've always said, well, we're realistic and optimistic, it makes me want to ask you, well, in the light of the realities we're all living through now, what gives you cause for optimism? What is the case that actually this push towards a circular economy is actually going to maintain in the face of the circumstances we're in today?
I think, Lucy, there's no question that the world economy has been turned upside down, and indeed many people's lives by COVID. And one thing we've always felt with the Foundation's goal of accelerating the transition to a circular economy is it's an opportunity. The circular economy is a massive opportunity. It's an opportunity for people. It's an opportunity for business. It's an opportunity for biodiversity. It's the entire economy that flips on its head and works in a different way. In fact, it's a very simple idea. Going from that straight line where you take a material, make something out of it and throw it away, to one where you design waste and pollution out, by design, as Joe said, where you keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, and then you regenerate natural systems. And in doing that, you provide better solutions for people. It's better growth. We've seen the economics and they stack up for business. If you shift from linear to circular, you build a restorative, regenerative model, and it works economically for your business. So we're incredibly optimistic at the Foundation.
And when you say you're optimistic, I can see the scale of what's trying to be achieved, but in the face of this year and this pressure, what cause is there for actually believing that the momentum is keeping going? Andrew, I know.
Well, I think the momentum in and of itself is really something to be optimistic about. When we started the Foundation 10 years ago, we were working with 5 companies. Now we have something in the order of 1,100 that we're working with, and 1,700 organisations overall. We work with governments, cities, institutions, with leading universities around the world, with hundreds of NGOs. But it's not just that momentum, it's really over the last 8 months we've seen even more companies come in. We've not seen people retreating from this agenda at all. They're saying we need to lean into it harder, not step back. We've had additional funders come in, we've had some very big announcements on companies, and I think really interestingly, the finance sector is starting to wake up to this idea. We've had the work we've done with BlackRock, who's one of our strategic partners. We helped them to create a fund in October last year, and that's through the pandemic period has actually grown extraordinarily, such that it's over £1 billion fund now. That is, I think, something to be optimistic about, and we have many, many other financial institutions who are now waking up to the notion of a circular economy as a better growth model, and one which really builds on the momentum of the ESG era, the finance for sustainability and for renewable energy. The circular economy is now coming in and really taking things even further and saying there's a real opportunity to transform the real economy to make it, as Ellen said, something that is restorative and regenerative by design.
Brilliant. And actually what I'm hearing in that is that the thing is keeping pressing forward in spite of the situation. And in fact, the solutions idea means that in a time when we're all looking for solutions, it feels to me you're becoming more relevant. That's what you're telling us. Is that right?
I think we also feel, to that point, the circular economy, we've been working on this for 10 years, we've built a network over 10 years, the momentum has really begun to build, but it's something which is scalable. When you look at companies, when you look at them being the engines of innovation, and then into that engine you drop the idea of the circular economy, that's something that really can take off. And at a time where you have much stronger dialogue between policymakers and companies, perhaps because of COVID, actually we have something here that can really begin to motor. And that, when you couple it with design, and you couple it with the infinite possibilities of the internet and of sharing information, sharing learning, that then allows us, the general population, to adopt these ideas of circular economy at a speed we've never ever been able to do before. So digital is a really, really big player here.
And what does digital do for the idea and for pushing it forward?
Well, I think digital does a number of things. We can create solutions for people now that we could never conceive of only a few years ago. So we're able to redesign the way in which we get products and services to people, redesign the way in which people can access services. We can have much, much greater transparency so people can learn and exchange and understand what solutions are coming and the organisations who are driving those. We can engage people through digital learning and digital communications in ways that we've never been able to before, and the pandemic as well has shown the huge take-up of digital communications and learning and the way we work. So digital is fundamental, and it's what's powered the shift in the economy over the last 20 years. The technologies of communications and the ability to shift to global supply chains, that was all technology driven in many ways. Now we're seeing digital come over the top of that and even throw greater possibilities into the mix. So it's a very important part of it.
And when you see this sense of it driving through, even in this period, do you feel that people actually get the idea? Because sometimes you hear, well, it's very complicated, isn't it? Very complicated. And how does that strike you? Do you think it's very complicated, and what do we need to know? I
think at its heart, the circular economy couldn't be more simple. If you think of the flow of materials around the world, since the Industrial Revolution, we've tended to use them up. We've had loads, there haven't been that many people, and we've taken a material, made something, and then thrown it away. But these materials are finite, and we have a growing world population. So we need to start to use those materials in a different way, in a circular way. So rather than them drop off the end of a system, those materials feed into a system with the 3 principles that I mentioned earlier. And that way you have 3 very specific principles that you can apply to design, you can apply to the way the economy runs, you can apply as a user of a product, for example. Everything shifts around those 3 principles to build a regenerative, restorative economy, which actually, interestingly, the faster we grow that, the better. We talk about better growth. Actually, the more circular economy we have, the better. The more circular economy, we regenerate more farmland, we regenerate more land, there's less biodiversity loss because the materials are feeding back into the system.
So it's actually not just an economic idea, is it? I mean, by the time you're talking about universities and businesses and governments and designers, you're actually saying that lots of people are feeding into this idea. And that in one way and another, it's about them creating solutions. Have I got that right?
Very, very much so. And I think what's interesting as well as more and more people are coming into this idea, we hear about regenerative economics, we hear about the importance of the ecosystems to the economy, and these things are interconnected. I think the COVID virus has helped people understand the interconnectedness of things in the economy. And, we are seeing people waking up, and we are seeing a real interest in solutions, and the idea that, we can't deal with this at the end of pipe. As Joe said, it's not just about recycling and waste, it's about going upstream and designing new solutions and better solutions for people.
We're right at the beginning of this extraordinary summit, and actually it's testimony to the way the foundation has risen to the pandemic situation in yourselves, isn't it? Because you're actually reaching so many more people than you would have done had you been in one space. And you've got a star lineup here over the next few days. So I suppose I'm prompted to ask, what do you want us all to get out of it? I mean, what do you hope we hear? Why are the people who are showing up to be on your platforms and discuss this with you, why are they joining in? And what's the message you want us to take away?
Yeah.
We're lucky enough to work with some incredibly influential and important people in the world who have helped us to build the narrative of the circular economy. And when we look at the lineup just in the next 2 days, we have Larry Fink, who's the head of the biggest investing house in the world. We have Lily Cole, who is a great influencer within fashion and design and actually entrepreneurship. We have a group of some of the leading CEOs from some of the biggest companies in the world who are speaking at the summit. We have Frans Timmermans, the first Vice President of the European Commission, all within this next 2 days, and many, many, many others. And what they do is they're really, there's such consistency now within the narrative around circular economy, which is really interesting. At the beginning, people were trying to piece it together. Now I think there's much, much more consistency of understanding of what is that circular economy, how do we create that circular economy.
And I think the thing I'd listen out for is these people are all talking not only a common vision, but about solutions, scale solutions that match the scale of the challenges that we're facing. And this is really interesting because these are, as Ellen said, being driven through the engine of industry and can scale globally and can play out very, very quickly. You'll hear lots of examples of that and lots of examples of design and how the design community globally is getting into this idea and understanding that this is the future of design.
So I know we only have a moment or two left, but if I think back to when this launched, and it's 10 years old, I mean, almost this week, so happy birthday to the foundation, and I was there at its launch, and I'm delighted to be here today. So, Ellen, if you look at what's happening over these next few days, is this what you hoped?
I think, you look at this few days, but you also look at where we are as a foundation. It does make me think of that launch, and I remember being asked by a journalist at that launch, so what actually are you trying to achieve with the foundation? We were there with our 5 founding partners, and I said, what we're trying to achieve with the foundation is we're trying to shift the global economy from linear to circular. And there was a tiny team, and it did, you could say, sound like a pipe dream, but ultimately now 10 years on, we have a huge network of 1,700 organisations, and we really do feel that momentum. So I'm thrilled with where we are today, but we have so much more to do.
And Andrew, you're at the helm. So when you look into the next 10 years, what do you want to have happen?
Well, I think 3 things are interesting. One is, our ability to build unstoppable momentum behind this idea. Second thing is to really get it into the global economic narrative in the mainstream. And thirdly, I think is, whatever innovative approaches we can think of and impact we can have in 10 years, we need to do it in 5.
Well, that's a great way to set up the summit with a real sense of urgency, and good luck with it all, and over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Lucy. Punchy start. Right, over the past 6 months, governments across the world have stepped into the economy in a significant way, providing huge subsidies and rescue and stimulus packages. Miranda Schnitger leads our work with governments. Miranda, governments across the world, among other things, have just spent a lot of money responding to the crisis. Where does this leave the circular economy agenda?
Thanks, Joe. It is great to be here. And yes, it has been a huge moment for governments. But I think we can be cautiously optimistic about circular economy remaining on the agenda and playing a key role in economic recovery discussions. But let's hear from leaders in the field. Frans Timmermans is Executive Vice President for the European Green Deal at the European Commission. The circular economy has been placed front and centre of the European Green Deal, which is the Commission's vision for how to take the European economy forward. It is a development of considerable importance and builds on the first EU Circular Economy Action Plan. Franz has been instrumental in both, and we caught up with him earlier on whether the pandemic has dampened commitment to a circular economy transition or has brought renewed focus.
Looking at the current context, and it's been very clear early on in the COVID crisis and the recovery that was needed that the Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan as part of this was one of the key pillars of that recovery to deliver better growth. Can you elaborate a bit on this and maybe tell us how you think these frameworks could permeate the industrial strategy of Europe going forward?
What COVID has done is taken away other options other than now change. And so when we recover, we need to make sure we recover in a way that prepares us for the 21st century and doesn't take us back into the 20th century. And much will depend on the political choices that will be made these months and next years. And if we make the wrong choices, we will create tremendous amounts of stranded assets and we will not take our economy forward. If we make the right choices based on the Green Deal, based on the need to digitize our economy, based on the need to increase our resilience, we can use the opportunities of the Industrial Revolution to transform our economy into a circular economy, in an economy that is no longer dependent on primary resources, that it can change its energy mix and that can create sustainable jobs for people who are really, really scared that they might lose a job because of the crisis as a result of the pandemic.
You have been in charge of the previous Circular Economy Action Plan in Europe, and it would be interesting to get your take on how the idea evolved, how it's a more holistic, systemic proposition than it ever was. What do you think was the best contribution to that sort of progress in the debate?
Well, I think the early successes in certain areas, the fact that the whole idea of how you treat waste was revolutionized in the last 5 years, the fact that most industries are now very quickly buying into this, the fact that you see more and more coordination between public authorities at all levels, because the circular economy can only work if you start at the local level and end at the global level. And I think we've seen a very interesting dynamic on all these levels. And as you know, like anything you do in life, if it has a success, it will attract other people. And I think the momentum we see now across the board for the circular economy is impressive. And this has really changed only in the last couple of years. When we presented our first action plan, it was something for the initiated, for the happy few. And now it's become more or less the buzzword across the across all economic activities, frankly.
Okay, welcome back. That was Frans Timmermans there. We are going to try speaking with Alan Jope, the CEO of Unilever, and Liana Pripkovac, who is the CSO of the Inter-IKEA Group. Okay, let's jump straight into it because I know you're on a very tight time schedule and we're very grateful for you given the time today. Alan, Unilever has been an early mover on this. You have some big commitments in the market. Clearly, massive business disruption at the moment, low oil price affecting, I guess, packaging commitments that you have made. What is the cause for optimism? Why should we be optimistic about Unilever's circular economy ambition?
Well, thanks. Listen, I'm happy to unambiguously confirm that despite this pandemic, Unilever will not step back from our ambition to be one of the world's leading sustainable businesses and to make sustainable living commonplace. Actually, our journey to be a circular business has to continue. The pandemic's shown just how fragile everything is and how interconnected it is. So we're very committed to delivering our social and environmental goals on plastic packaging, on climate and nature. And just last week, our home care division announced what it's calling Clean Future commitment to replace all the carbon derived from fossil fuels in our cleaning and laundry formulations with renewed or renewable carbon. So it's important to appreciate the context of our global economy. We see low fossil fuel prices, a rising trend of unhelpful nationalism, and most treasuries are pretty broke. But as Frans said, there's hope. Consumers really are demanding a shift in responsible consumption. We're seeing that especially with young people. Businesses are moving, and we want governments to move out with us to invest in stimulus packages that build circular infrastructure that will drive jobs and positive environmental outcomes. So please sleep well at night. Unilever's circular economy ambitions remain high, but our mission goes just beyond our business, actually. We don't just want to change within the system. We want to be part of changing the system.
Thank you very much. And I want to come back on that homeware commitment because we're finding that very interesting. Liena, when we think about IKEA becoming a strategic partner of the foundation, that happened at the peak of the crisis. I mean, many, if not all, IKEA stores were shut. Tell me, how do you think about managing the short-term business pressures with commitment to longer-term objectives, like your commitment to be a circular business by 2030?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're delighted to be here, and I think it's the perfect timing, actually. If you think about what we see now, just before the pandemic, we saw all the changes that needs to happen around climate, around the equality and the possibility to turn into a circular society. And as Frans Timmermans said, this is a project for society. So what we could see right now, it's probably never been so important. It's almost like you're coming to this hill and you have to decide if you're going to slow down, you're not going to make that hill, or you actually speed up. And that makes it possible for you to really fast track into the really important part, what we need to see now. And IKEA has been on the journey for a while now to look into what a circular business means for a circular society. And what we can really see is that we can go through the material transformation. We can go through the product design. We can look into new different business models, but it's the scale and speed that is going to make the difference. And the scale and speed you can't do by yourself. That's why we're so delighted to be here at the summit today, because I think this is the possibility for both expected and unexpected collaboration to really trigger and speed up this change.
I'm glad you brought up that point about speed and collaboration. And Alan, I wanted to come back to you just on the homeware commitment. So phasing carbon, fossil-based carbon out of your homeware range, that sounds like a big job. Is it something you can do alone? And can you make it real for us? Like, who will you be relying on to help you achieve that?
Okay, so we're calling this our Clean Future program. It's a big deal for us, and we hope for the industry. And basically, it's about reinventing age-old chemistries so that we can give people high-performing, affordable home cleaning and hygiene products that are kind to them and kind to the planet. We've already made big commitments on circularity in our packaging, but now we are trying to bring circularity to what's inside your laundry bottle. So we're going to replace 100% of the carbon derived from fossil fuels in our home care formulations with carbon that comes from circular sources. Let me explain using a concept we're calling the carbon rainbow. It means shifting from black carbon, chemicals derived from fossil fuels, to chemicals that are derived from renewable and circular sources of carbon. So for example, we're calling plant-based carbon green carbon, or marine-based blue carbon, or gray carbon from recovered waste, or best of all, purple carbon from carbon dioxide recaptured from the air. We've already proven the principle. It's in some of our products already. We want to make this idea of renewed and recycled carbon the norm. We want to change 1 million tons of input to our business to help change 1 billion tons from the industry. It's going to take a decade, and it's a great example of circularity, reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, using the planet's resources better. It's going to require system change again, working with others, for example, our friends at Solvay.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really love about it, apart from it being highly upstream intervention, is that as a consumer, you don't necessarily need to make a choice. The choice is made for you. All of the range doesn't have those ingredients. And Liena, I wanted to come back to you because IKEA is such a tactile, makes such a tactile product. There will be huge changes behind the scenes that we don't see, but there will be big changes that we see and feel as customers in your stores. Can you talk about that? Like how is it going to feel different to be an IKEA customer?
I think it's a wonderful bridge, because the example that was just given now by Unilever is the behind the scene. You know, you need to just find the better design, the better materials, the better products. But IKEA, of course, our biggest passion and our knowledge is in life at home. And if you're going to really transition into a circular society, you also need to understand behaviors of people and life at home and how you actually live in a circular society. That will also influence design. So I think the possibility that we see now is to really move in and understanding how people can live in a circular society. And that we can then adapt to with the solutions around it. So life at home, as you talked about the cleaning agent, we would also look into, you know, how you sleep in the best way, how you feed your family the best way, and how you are able to have a safe home with a circular component that is just the better design.
Yeah, super example, and to really hit on the design topic, which we've heard actually, you know, in the opening session with Ellen, and it's great to have you repeat it now. We've lost Alan because he's dropped out. He had a call at 5. I just got one final question for you, Lena, if you don't mind, as we have you. We're talking about speed here. You know, we heard Andrew say, we got to imagine what we can do in 10 years and we have to achieve that in 5. Can you just tell us what, I mean, it's hard to reduce to one thing, but how do we move faster on this?
No, I mean, this is why we're here. I really think no one can do this alone. I do think it's a fantastic opportunity now that we find a common language together on what circular principles and circular society could look like, and that we actually start to collaborate across different industries and in different collaborations. That will speed up the big change. Then I think it's also extremely important that the good examples that come now and forward with all the good ideas that exist are scaled. So we are not just looking into the explorations or the small anecdotal changes in society. We really need to look at the one that shifts. And that's where we see that we can also have a role of actually making big shifts into reaching the many people. And we know that if it's going to be a change, you need to reach the many and not just a few happy ones, as Frans Zimmermann said.
Thank you very much, Lena. And obviously affordability is just such a key dimension to all of this. Thank you for joining us today. Right, that's all we have time for. We will be back here tomorrow, Thursday the 10th of September at 4 p.m. British summertime. And we'll be taking a deeper dive into plastics, finance, food and fashion. And hear another set of leading voices, including Larry Fink, Emmanuel Faber, Kathleen McCaughlin, Mark Schneider, Anna Scavuzzo, and a host of others. In the meantime, there is a lot more content for you to enjoy. So the Frans Timmermans interview that you saw, that's an example of our pre-recorded content, which is on the on-demand section. But we also have another 5 laser sessions, which are our topic-focused live sessions. The first one starts shortly at about 5:30 BST, and Miranda, who you saw briefly earlier, will take a closer look at government action in Latin America with a great set of guests. Tomorrow we have 4 more. We have education at 10 a.m, business at 11:30 a.m, design at 1 p.m, and plastics at 2:30 p.m. A reminder, all the times are BST, so that's GMT +1. For more information on the lasers and to sign up for the sessions, do check out the Summit platform, www.emf.org/Summit 2020. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.